Okay, hey everybody. So I want to go over the Zoom H5 handy recorder. This is a audio recorder that you can check out for recording sound effects or additional dialogue or any kind of other sounds that you might want to add to your project. Um, so just to go around the outside of it, first of all, on the left side is the power button. So you press that and that powers it up. Also on this side, you have your headphone jack. So, you're always going to need to monitor your audio with headphones, plug in your headphones there. And then below that, there's a volume control for the headphones. That does not affect the input volume recording, but that will affect the volume going out to your headphones. On the other side, there is a menu button, which we'll get into in a minute, and also a little lever here for toggling through the items in the menu. Below that is where you put the SD card in. So your SD card goes in right there. Okay. All right. On the front of the unit, you have three different gain controls. So this is for adjusting the levels of your recording. So for quiet sounds, you may need to boost these up. For louder sounds, you may need to make them quieter. You notice that there are two down here and one up here. So the Zoom comes with two built-in stereo microphones. Those are the ones up front here. This is where you adjust the gain for those, okay? That is only going to affect these. Down here is where you would adjust the gain for an external microphone if you had one plugged in. So at the bottom of the Zoom, there's two inputs here for plugging in two different XLR microphones. So those would just get plugged in down here if you had an external microphone, and then you would be using these gain control buttons down here to adjust the levels for those. You would also need to select those as the input for the Zoom. So right now, you see I have left and right. That's these up here. See, when I tap it, it indicates on the volume meter there. If I had external microphones connected, which are the ones down here, then I would need to select 1 and 2 in order to tell it that that's where the input's coming from. And you notice when I do that, like the meter goes dead. So there's no microphone attached to this right now, which means there's no input coming into it. So I'm going to leave this at the stereo left and right. Built-in microphones. They're not totally built-in. This thing is actually removable. There are different modules that you can plug in on the top of there, but we have the stereo mic here. Okay, there's a few things we need to get into for setting up. And before we get into that though, actually just speaking about levels, and this should be review for everybody, but when it comes to knowing where your levels should be, in other words, like knowing how much you need to boost or cut the gain, for a voice, you want your levels to be peaking between about -12 and -6. So you see, like my voice here is probably a little bit louder than it should be. I've got this thing boosted all the way up to 10. If I bring that back a little bit, I mean, and also I'm not speaking right into the microphone, so it's not the best recording situation, but levels like this where the peaks of my voice are hitting the 12, but not going all the way too much past the 6. That's about where you want them to be. Okay, let's go into the menu. So I'm going to hit the menu button here. Now, I'm not going to go through everything that's in the menu. There are a lot of other things that are in here that may or may not be useful. I'm going to hit on the things that I know will be important and useful for you, okay? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to scroll down to where it says input, output, or in, out. Okay. There's one thing in here that I think might be important to pay attention to, and it's the 1/2 phantom. So phantom power is a way of powering the microphone. This is, and by the way, this is only if you were using an external microphone plugged into it. It's a way of powering the external microphone from the Zoom recorder so that the microphone receives power actually from the recorder. Now, if you have a microphone that takes a battery, you can power it that way. Some microphones require phantom power though, and so if you have a microphone that requires phantom power, you would need to go in here and you'd need to either do input 1 or 2 or all and turn that phantom power off or on. Okay. Like I said, if your microphone takes a battery and you have a battery in it, then you would need to have your phantom power turned off. But otherwise, if it's a mic that requires power from the Zoom, then you'd want to have that turned on. Okay, I'm going to back out of that by hitting the menu button to take us back to the main menu here. And I'm going to scroll down to where it says record. So this is where we determine the record format that we're using. So just like video formats, there are all different kinds of audio formats that vary in quality. Lower quality gives you more recording time. Higher quality gives you less recording time. You don't want to go any lower than 48 kilohertz / 16-bit. So you can see that right there listed, 48K 16-bit. That's kind of the standard for video and what we're shooting. You can go higher than that, and when you bring it into Final Cut, it's just going to get sampled down to whatever your timeline is set to, which is probably going to be 48K. But it won't necessarily hurt anything, although it will take up more space on your SD card, but that's usually not a problem. You just don't want to go below that. So you don't want 44.1, you don't want any of these MP3 formats. 48K 16-bit is the one to choose. Okay, so I've got that selected. I'm going to back out of this again. And one more time. And I'm going to go down to SD card. So this is where you erase your SD card. Okay, so I select that, and then I go down to Format, and then it'll say, are you sure you want to erase the card? And I will say yes, and it'll work on that for a second, and then when it's done, the card will be cleared off and ready to go. That is pretty much everything on the Zoom recorder here. Like I said, these are great, really handy for picking up additional audio or recording even music. You can do multiple inputs into them, recording voiceovers, any of that stuff. They're extremely useful and very, very high quality. Okay, that's it. Bye.